Look closely at the physics of this hit. Jacob, an experienced batter, swings at a fast pitch, but instead of a clean strike, the ball glances off the very edge of the wooden bat. This awkward angle forces the baseball to aggressively slice upward and away, changing direction completely. To understand where that ball ends up, we have to map the geography. The Northside Bears Baseball Club plays on a ground directly adjacent to Maple Grove Secondary School. The only thing separating the field from the school's courtyard is a 4-meter mesh fence. This diagram traces the anomaly. The sliced ball catches enough elevation to clear that 4-meter barrier. At that exact moment, Mrs. Lim, a teacher supervising a weekend music rehearsal, is walking across the school courtyard. The dashed line shows the ball's trajectory crossing the property line and intersecting directly with her path. The baseball strikes Mrs. Lim's arm, causing a significant injury. In response, Miss Lim brings a legal action against the baseball club. She alleges that the club failed to take reasonable care to prevent baseballs from leaving the field and endangering people on neighboring land. A severe injury to a teacher supervising students on a weekend naturally evokes strong sympathy, but determining legal liability requires stripping away that emotion and processing the facts through a strictly objective legal framework. In law, we use an algorithm called IRAC, standing for Issue, Rule, Analysis, and Conclusion. This visual matrix represents that algorithm. It is a rigid, step-by-step method designed to map chaotic real-world variables to established legal axioms. The first step is isolating the issue. We take the raw, messy facts of the accident and condense them down into a single, precise legal question. For the Northside case, that question is the baseball club liable in negligence for failing to prevent a baseball from leaving the field and injuring a person on neighboring property? Once the question is set, we move to the rule stage. This establishes the baseline axiom the plaintiff must satisfy to win. The rule for negligence contains 3 specific elements: duty of care, breach of duty, and causation of damage. Duty of care means a legal obligation exists to avoid harming someone. Breach means falling below the standard of care. Causation means the breach directly caused the harm. Negligence is a cumulative test. A plaintiff cannot win by proving just 1 or 2 of these. They must successfully prove all 3 to establish liability. By defining the issue and outlining the rule, we have established strict logical boundaries. The physical facts of the accident will now be processed inside the structure. We now enter the analysis phase, where the historical data of the Saturday game is tested against those 3 checkboxes. We start with the first element. Did a duty of care exist between the Northside Bears and Mrs. Lim? The law requires entities to avoid acts that could foreseeably injure their legal neighbors. Because the Maple Grove school grounds are directly adjacent to the baseball field, anyone on those grounds is in the immediate zone of physical proximity. Mrs. Lim easily qualifies as a foreseeable neighbor. We will temporarily bypass the second element to look at the third, causation and damage. Factual causation here is indisputable. The baseball escaping the club's facility directly and physically caused Mrs. Lim's broken arm. Because duty and causation are definitively satisfied, the entire legal weight of this case hinges on that complex middle element, breach of duty. To determine a breach of duty, the court asks if the club failed to meet the standard of a hypothetical, reasonable person in managing risk. This chart analyzes the first variable, foreseeability. If we look at the club's historical data along this 20-year timeline, we see exactly 3 instances where a ball cleared the 4-meter fence. Because the timeline proves it has happened 3 times in 2 decades, a ball clearing the fence is undeniably a legally foreseeable risk. But here we hit a crucial legal disconnect. Just because a risk is foreseeable does not mean it has a high probability of actually occurring. Those 3 isolated incidents must be measured against the sheer volume of safe play. The club has hosted thousands of at-bats over 20 years without a ball leaving the park. Furthermore, look at the highly unpredictable mechanics required to replicate this specific injury. It took an experienced batter swinging forcefully at a fast pitch, catching the exact edge of the bat to generate the anomalous trajectory needed to clear the mesh. A reasonable person in law assesses their obligations based on realistic statistical probability rather than trying to engineer against theoretical worst-case foreseeability. Tort law does not demand absolute 100% risk elimination from entities facilitating sporting activities. Simply proving a risk exists is legally insufficient. The plaintiff must prove the probability of that risk was significant enough to demand further preventative action. To weigh these factors, courts use the calculus of negligence. This is a judicial tool used to balance the magnitude of a given risk against the burden of preventing it. We can see this represented by the risk profile and the burden of precaution on this scale. First, we take the quantified probability, the 3 anomalous balas over 20 years, and assign it to the risk side of the scale. We also factor in the gravity of harm. Mrs. Lim suffered a severe arm injury, which adds considerable weight to the risk profile. Now we shift our focus to the opposing side of the scale to analyze the burden of precaution. The club already takes a significant primary precaution, the installation and maintenance of a 4-meter mesh fence. We then have to ask what further precautions would actually be required to completely eliminate a 3 and 20-year risk. Guaranteeing no ball ever escapes would require extreme, unreasonable burdens. The club would have to construct a fully enclosed dome over the field, or abandon playing the sport entirely. When measured against a statistically minute probability of harm, the existing 4-meter fence is a highly proportionate and reasonable response. Demanding absolute prevention would paralyze normal societal activities. Because the club's current precautions satisfy the standard of reasonable care, there is no breach of duty. With the analysis complete, we transition to the final stage of the algorithm to generate the definitive legal outcome. The conclusive verdict derived from the analysis is clear. The Northside Bears Baseball Club did not breach their duty of care. This creates a cascading effect. Because the breach element failed, the entire negligence claim collapses, regardless of the established duty and causation. The core rationale is that maintaining a 4-meter fence is a legally reasonable precaution against a highly improbable freak occurrence. Mrs. Lim's injury is an unfortunate reality, but tort law is not an insurance policy that guarantees compensation for every accident. The Northside case demonstrates the macro function of the IRAC method. It processed complex, competing variables step by step to reach a conclusion. The algorithm successfully prevented the emotional tragedy of an injury from overriding objective legal standards. The result is a logical, defensible outcome based purely on the calculus of reasonable care.